so let's get started. So this week we're talking about the functions and program structures. On Tuesday we have already talked about a few functions, especially we used calculator as an example. Today we'll continue with that example, and now we're going to look into this get character, right? Remember, what do we deal with the calculator? Say we enter a bunch of numbers, and then two numbers, and then operands, right? After that, we will decide to print out the result if we encounter an equal sign. So there's a little issue with this calculator, which is while we're getting numbers, we don't know if this number has ended or not until we reaching the space behind it, right? And this happens, well, it's kind of okay in this case because we can basically ignore the space for the next step. But however, if, let's say, our operator will have a number and then an operand after, let's say a multiplying sign, right after a number. So in that case, once we read this operate like multiplying symbol, we know, okay, that's the end of my number, right? However, we have separate function for reading number and for reading operands. So it's too late for us to operating on the multiply sign. Like we have to put it back into this, like we call it a buffer. Right, so we're reading character until at one point we decide, oh, that's the end of the this type of entry we want. For example, numbers. Right, at that point we have already get a symbol which we don't want. So we want a way to give it back. So similar to the stack, we kind of we're using a buffer to store this temporary number we read already, but we kind of get back to it. Okay, so this is why we said we're going to talk about that getop function. But before that, let's talk about a little bit on the variables scope, right? So we have talked about this before: automatic variable and external variables. Automatic variables are those variables you defined inside the function, right? So it's limited to the function itself. Well, external one is just for entire file of your script, right? So previously we have using this stack for saving numbers for our calculator. So this stack as well as its pointer are external variables because we can use it between two functions. One is pop and the other is push. All right. So as long as we declare this variable outside the function, they're considered as external variable. So we don't have to explicitly say this is external int, right? However, if we're referring to external variable which is declared in the other file, right? So we have to add this thing here. So the compiler will know, okay, it will need to find the definition of it from the other file. So yeah, see, this is some example. In one file, we kind of define a file. While we talk about definition of a variable means we actually allocate the space for it. We save this number and allocate the space in our memory. All right. However, if we are talking about declaration here is only defining the property of it. It's not to assign any memory to it. In this case, it makes sense because you assign the memory here in file 1, while in file 2, you only declare it. So basically, you define what is the type of it without creating any memory space for it. Okay, now let's look at this getop function. As I explained here, earlier, we're reading numbers one by one until we find, oh, this is not a number, right? At that point, we wanted to get back that number or that character to a cache. So assuming like next time we will read from the cache if something's there, or we will read from the input if there's nothing in the cache. So in this case, we will create a special function before we use get character to read from the user inputs, right? This time, let's assume we already have a function made get ch. Okay, it's our custom version of get character. It's the same as the get character, except if there is something in our cache. Okay, or buffer, okay, say. So if there's something we have returned back to it, return back before, it will read out first. If that was empty, it will read that function works is that it will first skip all the spaces, right? So if it's reading the space or tab or new line symbol, right, it will just ignore them. By the way, see here we are using this special get character function, right? And then if it's not a digit or decimal point, we will think that's the operator. Okay, we'll return it. If it's not, if it is a number, then we will. But here, see this part will just return from here. So this function will end if it's reaching operator. However, if it continues, that means it must be a digit or decimal point, right? Then we're basically collecting the number one by one, right? We have seen this before. So every time we encounter a digit, we will store it in our C array, S array, until we get the end of the other numbers, right? So this first part here is this before decimal, and the second part is inside decimal, right? So yeah, every time we're getting a new character, and we put it into this S array. As long as it's smaller than our limitation, right? The biggest size we allow for our S array. Then we will at the end of the character will end this new terminator, right? And they return this this number. If it's smaller than our if it's smaller than our thing. So otherwise, right? Otherwise, we will here. This means like we are reaching a character which is not. Right? When we finish reading all the numbers, that means the last number we have encountered is not a number, right? So in that case, we will return it back to the cache or the buffer we just talked about. After that, we will add a terminator at the end. Then we just return this result. And there's an exception. If it's too big, then we return too big. All right. All right. So in this function, we have used two additional custom function. One is getch. The other is ungetch, right? So now let's look at them one by one. So this is the function for getch, just one line here, right? So essentially, it will see if there's any free position, if there's anything in the buffer, right? If there's anything in the buffer, that means the pointer is not pointing at 0 point, right? 0 point means nothing, right? If it's pointing at position 1 or 2 or 3, we basically just will read a value from this buffer, right? Stack, right? After we read it, well, actually we will decrement that number first, and then we read the position, right? So if say we have already have something in the position 0, right? So we will, but that pointer is say it's 1. That means it has 1 value in this buffer, and we'll decrement it by 1, so it's pointing at the buffer at position 0 and return that one. If not, let's say this is equal to 0, we will just use getCharacter function, right? One way or another. Okay. The ungetch is basically just adding information to the buffer, right? So we'll first determine if our buffer has already exceeded our maximum size. But if it's not the case, we will add our value to the current buffer position based off the pointer and increment the pointer by 1. Right? This is essentially what is our push do, right? And this is essentially what is our pop do. The other fancy thing is just to make sure it's not empty or it's not max out. Right? Yeah. Again, this is very similar to the push and pop we just talked about last time. So we're using this buffer again just to work as like a middle step, so we can hold up user inputs, or on the other side we could simulate user inputs. Let's say if we don't want to test our code, and you don't want to enter, test command every time during your test process, you can use some method like this to adding user input into your buffer, and when your program trying to read from user, is actually reading from the buffer instead. So let's take a look at an example like this. So this is our first exercise. So we just saw we had this ungetch. Now we wanted to create a function called ungetch s, is for string. So instead of we undo one character, we want to undo an entire string. The purpose of this could be, as I explained earlier, let's say we made a program which will interact with user, right? User will ask user to enter some string, and then you will do whatever process with it. However, for testing this function, that means the tester has to manually type the string again and again, assuming you have to run it multiple times. So in this particular case, we will define the string ourselves. Okay, we'll define the string inside the code. This just for testing purpose. And then we use this ungetch string, right, to push it to the buffer. And then later on, the rest of the process is just assuming that's another purpose. Don't worry about what does it mean here. The essential idea is we want to push an entire string into our buffer, so your later on program can process it for whatever reason, either separate it or whatever operation you want to do. What you are concerning with here is only that we need a function called ungetString, which will put whatever array we give it to the buffer. That's it. Yeah. So we already have